Nobody tells you that the wire transfer is the fast part. You send the money, you feel like the finish line is right there in front of you, and then you sit. You wait for a file to move through hands you will never see, in an order nobody printed on the brochure, and the calendar that promised you a passport in a single season quietly turns into something else. That gap between the wire and the passport is where almost every foreign investor loses their footing, because they planned their life around a timeline that was written to sell, not written to be true. Let me show you the fear in a shape you can actually feel. Picture the moment you have paid, the property is yours on paper, and you open your inbox expecting good news. Instead, there is silence, weeks of it. Then a request for one more document you were never told about. Then a note that a translation needs to be recertified, that a signature page is missing a stamp, that the file has moved to another desk, and the clock for you starts again. You are not rejected. You are just suspended, holding a receipt for a large sum with no date attached to it. That suspension is not a horror story about a place. It is the ordinary friction of any serious government file anywhere on earth, and the only real damage is the damage that surprise does to a plan you built too tightly. So here is what I am going to do in this video. I am going to walk you through the real timeline, stage by stage, from the day your money lands to the day a passport is actually in your hand. I am going to show you exactly where files stall, why they stall, and which stalls are avoidable versus which ones you simply have to breathe through. And I am going to tell you the part that most advisors skip on purpose, because it is the part that makes the sale harder. Stay with me to the end, because the last piece is the one that decides whether this whole thing works for you at all, and it has almost nothing to do with the passport itself. If this is your first time here, I am Berk Tüzel. For the past several years, I have helped entrepreneurs and investors plan their international structures, and I am the founder of Corpenza. Now, before a single figure leaves my mouth, an honest asterisk. Processing timelines drift. They move with the volume of applications, with staffing, with the season, with rule changes that nobody schedules around your calendar. So everything I give you about duration is directional. It is the shape of the road, not a guarantee of the traffic on the day you drive it. Every year these numbers change, so reconfirm the current figures before you build anything around them. I would rather you trust the structure of what I say than the precision of a month I cannot promise. That honesty is the whole reason this channel exists. Why open a serious conversation about your future with something as dull as a schedule? Because the timeline is where the lie lives. The passport route is real, the destination is real, and the country at the end of it is a genuinely strong place to plant a root. Turkey is not the problem in this story. Turkey is the opportunity. The distortion is almost never about the outcome. It is about the tempo. When someone compresses a multi-stage government process into one confident-sounding promise, they are not describing the process. They are describing the version of it that closes a deal today. And the cost of that compression is not paid by them. It is paid by you, in the months you did not budget for, in the capital you assumed was working when it was only waiting. So let us walk the real road. Think of it in stages rather than exact dates, because the stages are stable even when the dates are not. The first stage is the money and the asset. You make the qualifying investment. If it is property, you are not just buying. You are buying in a way that satisfies a specific legal threshold with a valuation report that an authority will accept, held for a required number of years. That holding period matters more than people admit in the excitement of the purchase, because your capital is committed. It is not liquid. You cannot treat it as a parking spot you can leave the moment the mood changes. Stage 1 feels fast because it is the part you control. That is exactly why it fools you. The second stage is the paperwork spine. This is your tax number, your local bank account, the notarized and certified translations of everything you own and everything you are. This is where the first real stall lives, and it is almost always a document stall, a translation done by the wrong kind of translator, a certificate that needed one more layer of authentication, a signature from your home country that needed a specific stamp to be recognized abroad. None of these are dramatic. Each one adds a week and the weeks stack. The investors who move fastest are not luckier. They front-loaded this stage. They had every document over-prepared before anyone asked. So when the request came, the answer was already in the drawer. The third stage is the application itself and the residence layer that usually carries it. Your file is assembled, submitted, and enters the review that you no longer control. This is the long middle. This is the silence I described at the start. It is not one desk, it is several, and the file moves between them in an order that is not yours to set. The most useful thing I can tell you about this stage is emotional, not technical. You must expect the middle to feel like nothing is happening, because from your side, nothing visible will be. That is normal. A file in motion looks identical to a file that is stuck, and the only way to tell them apart is a real point of contact who can actually check on your behalf. The fourth stage is the decision and the passport. Approval comes, and then there is still a tail. The passport is issued, biometrics are taken, documents are collected. This tail is short compared to the middle, but people forget it exists and book their lives one step too early. Leave room in it. Now add it up honestly. If you take the smoothest version of each stage and lay them end to end, you are looking at a process measured in many months, not a handful of weeks. And in the real world, you should mentally pad it further, because at least one stage will surprise you. Which one, you cannot predict. That it will happen, you can. Plan for the padding, and the whole experience changes from panic to patience. Here is the caveat that most advisors will not say out loud, and it is the reason I asked you to stay. The timeline is not your real problem. The timeline is annoying, but it ends. The thing that does not end, the thing that follows you long after the passport is in your pocket, is the assumption underneath the whole purchase. Most people buy this believing the passport itself changes their tax life. It does not. A passport is a travel and identity document. Your tax outcome is not decided by the card you carry. It is decided by where you actually live, where your center of life sits, where you genuinely run things from. That is the principle, and it is universal. It is true everywhere, for everyone, in every country. Residence drives tax. The passport is a door, not a shield. This is why I tell you on this channel again and again that it is not your passport, it is your structure. A passport on its own is a single object, and a single object solves a single problem. What actually protects you and gives you options is the whole package moving together. Your residence, your real activity, your company, your banking, and yes, your passport, arranged so they agree with each other instead of contradicting each other. The passport is one arm, the structure is the body. And a country like Turkey is a genuinely strong place to build that body, not because you are running from somewhere, but because you are extending into somewhere. The root stays where your life truly is. The arms reach out. That is expansion, not escape. And the difference between those two words is the difference between a plan that survives a review and a plan that collapses under one. The trap, the one honest sentence the brochure will never print, is this. The most expensive misunderstanding is not the extra months of waiting. It is buying a passport as if it were a tax solution and then discovering a year later that your obligations followed your life and not your document. The waiting costs you patience. The misunderstanding costs you money, quietly, for years. And notice what the trap is not. It is not the country. It is not the investment. It is the myth that a shell company or a single card can quietly dissolve every obligation you carry. There is no tax-free paradise waiting at the end of a wire transfer. There is only structure that is built correctly or structure that is not. So here is what I recommend, plainly. First, treat the timeline as a range and not a date, and build your money and your schedule with slack in them, so a stall is an inconvenience and not a crisis. Second, front-load the paperwork stage ruthlessly, because that is the one part of the delay you can actually shorten. Third, and most important, do not buy the passport as a standalone answer to a question the passport does not answer. Decide first where you intend to genuinely reside and operate, because that decision, not the purchase, is what sets your real outcome. Get the residence and the structure right, and the passport becomes what it is supposed to be, a clean and powerful piece of optionality on top of a foundation that already works. Get the order wrong, and you own an expensive document that does far less than you were promised. Frame it that way, and you stop being someone waiting nervously for a file to clear. You become someone who chose a strong destination on purpose, built the structure underneath it correctly, and treated the passport as the last brick rather than the whole house. The passport was never meant to be a necessity you cornered yourself into. It is optionality, it is a choice you earn the right to make once the foundation beneath it can actually carry the weight. If you want the structure done in the right order, the residence, the company, the banking, and the passport arranged as one coherent thing instead of 4 disconnected purchases, that is the work we do at Corpenza. Not selling you a document and disappearing before the silence starts, but building the whole thing so that when the passport finally arrives, it lands on top of a plan that was already standing. That is it for this one. I hope to see you in the other videos. Take care.